Hi everyone, this is Annie Asrari from Everbridge, and we are going to wait a couple of minutes for people to sign in. We can see that people are still joining, so we will start shortly. You're just going to wait another couple of minutes for folks as they're joining the webinar. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. My name is Annie Asrari, and I'm Director of Product Management for our life safety solution at Everbridge called Safety Connection. And today's webinar is about Safety Connection. We want to show you some of the features of Safety Connection, and we want to talk through a few of the use cases that our customers use this product for. So thank you and welcome to this webinar. Let's get started. We know that our customers are facing a lot of different events around the world every day. We see organizations dealing with security threats, organizations deal with IT-related and weather-related events. They may face terrorist attacks, active shooter, and in all of these scenarios, they want to be able to ensure that their people are safe. The reason behind that is because organizations have certain assets. Those assets are people, buildings, key suppliers, it could be data centers, and those assets are facing threats around the world all the time. Our mission is to provide these organizations with the tools to mitigate the risk to their assets, especially when these risks are location-based and they need to be able to identify which assets are being affected by those risks. Let's go ahead and get a better understanding as to why these location-based emergencies are so important. Location-based emergencies are impacting organizations every day, and organizations have their main asset, their people, traveling, going from one building to another, lone workers, and analysts are telling us that by 2020, 72% of all workers are going to be mobile. So that means that organizations are now responsible for expanding the duty of care to all of their people, even the ones that are not within the main campuses of that organization. So people could be working remotely, they could be traveling, they could go from one building to another, and now we have to know exactly where they are because we need to be able to expand the duty of care to them. In recent years, we've seen that the threats are increasing as well. We've noticed that, Hurricane Sandy happened, Orlando club shooting, Nice and Paris and Brussels terrorist attacks, San Bernardino terrorist attack. All of these are examples of location-based emergencies. Location-based emergencies could impact an organization and impact the assets of that organization. And we need to know where our people are so that we can ensure that they are safe. Now, a traditional emergency notifications system had no knowledge of where people are. It focuses on static location. Static location comes from an HR tool or it comes from a self-service portal, and it's really the work address or home address of an individual. What we are trying to do is we are trying to provide our customers with the tools to know where their people are at any given point, because static address we know is no longer enough. People are traveling more than they ever did before, than the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, and employees are going between different buildings on a campus, or they're working remotely, or are lone workers out in the field. So having their static location is not going to be enough for us to expand the duty of care to them. So at Everbridge, we changed our outlook towards location because we needed to be able to identify where the lone workers are, where the travelers are, and where all the employees on campus are. So we said, okay, static location, we already get that from the HR system. Let's provide two other location types, last known location and expected location. We also care about people's availability. For example, if I have a medical emergency, I need to know who is the closest employee on this campus who is working right now, who is also CPR certified. So the on-call schedule and the skills come into play. Or if I have a fire evacuation, I need to know who are the people who need help with getting evacuated. So needs become important to know. So these are all the different parameters on a contact record, and these attributes help us find the right person with the right skill set who can resolve an issue, or the right person who has some needs, and we need to be able to address those needs during a certain crisis like a fire evacuation. So we introduced the concept of dynamic locations. With dynamic locations, we are able to address campus safety, lone worker safety, and travel safety. Those are the three key use cases of Safety Connection. Dynamic locations are really last known locations, which is where you are right now, and expected locations, which is where you are going to be. So where do we get all this location data from? Last known location comes from three key sources. Our own mobile app, the Everbridge mobile app. And the second source would be the badge access system. So an employee badges into the building, we update their last known location to reflect that they're at 25 Corporate Drive in Burlington. Or an employee connects with the corporate Wi-Fi system using their corporate credentials, and we can update their last known location to reflect that they're sitting close to hotspot number 3 on floor number 4 of the Burlington office. So those are the three key sources for updating last known locations. There are some sources for expected locations as well. Travel itineraries is a source for expected locations, and we get the travel itineraries from our strategic partner, International SOS. We can also get travel itineraries from Concur and a few other sources. Another source for expected locations are room and desk reservation systems, or conference room booking systems like Office 365. These are some sources for capturing dynamic locations and showing where people are at any given point. So Safety Connection focuses on dynamic locations and static locations, and it runs the gamut from your static location, which is your home and office, all the way to where you are going to be. So we like to layer the dynamic location information to get a better accuracy as to where people are at any given moment. There are some sources for capturing dynamic locations, such as physical panic buttons, or the Apple iWatch. Those are a couple of sources that share last known location with the platform. I mentioned Office 365 is a source for sharing expected locations. And there are a few other travel sources as well. Some sources that people don't often think about are things like corporate credit cards. Corporate credit cards are a source of location as well, and they can share last known location with the platform. So what happens to all that location data when we capture it? We use those location data elements on the contact record. So on a contact record, we have all the delivery methods of a contact, we have the static location of a contact, and we also have dynamic locations, which are last known and expected locations for an individual. Last known and expected location information help us locate people in case of location-based emergencies. We also want to have some other types of information like language preferences, needs, skills, certifications, departments and teams. All of those data points help us find the right person during an emergency. So our Safety Connection solution also has communications as its core. The whole point is to be able to communicate to people in case of location-based emergencies. So we want to be able to simply use a rule or draw a polygon on the map and find the people who might be impacted by an emergency and send them a life safety related notification and do a life safety check on them. It could be a standard notification, which means the person just needs to confirm that they received your notification, or it could be a polling notification, which you ask them a question and you say, are you safe? And they can press 1 for yes, I'm safe, 2 for I need help, 3 for I'm leaving the area, whatever it might be. So with polling, you draft the responses and your recipients can pick from one of those responses. As I mentioned, we want to have communications automated. So at the time of the emergency, we want the operator to simply pick the right template. If it's a hurricane, if it's a terrorist attack, active shooter, they don't need to be drafting the entire template and trying to figure out who are the impacted people at that point. The template already has the appropriate rules, and based on the location, it can route it to the people who are impacted or the people who need to know about this incident. So the operator will simply select from a few drop-down fields and specify the location of the event, or basically select the right building. If it's a building, they can select a point on a map, or even severity of the incident. And based on those few fields, the template will get routed to the right people at the right time. Safety Connection also has some mobile safety features as part of its feature set. The mobile safety features are emergency call, SOS, safe corridor, and check-in. SOS is a panic button. So when the SOS is pressed, 2 minutes of audio and video is going to get captured from the front camera of the phone, and that will initiate a notification to the security team. Whoever the organization has designated as the recipient of these panic buttons will receive that notification. They will see a link to the video of this panic button, and they will see what's going on around the person. The safety features also show up in our iWatch app. The same features are available as a wearable on the iWatch app. So if I'm a lone worker out in the field and I need help, I press the panic button and the panic button will send a notification to my security team, and it will let them know exactly where I am. It will let them know who was the person who pressed the panic button, and I can also receive notifications on my Apple Watch. I can respond to a polling message on my Apple Watch. The check-in button is pretty self-explanatory. Let's say I'm an employee who's traveling to London, and my employer wants to know that I arrived safely. I simply press check-in to let them know where I am and that I'm safe. Emergency call is a button that can start a two-way conversation, two-way call with public emergency services like 911, or it can initiate a call to a global security operations center or to your security team, depending on how an organization configures this. What's the use case of emergency call? Let's say I'm a worker who's traveling to Japan and I get mugged, and I don't know what is the equivalent of 911 in Japan. I simply press emergency call, and the system, the app knows where I'm in Japan, and it will route me to the equivalent of 911 in Japan. Another use case could be organizations will configure emergency call to go to their own global security operations center. So if I need help, I press the emergency call and I get on a call with the campus police or the organization's own security team. So it all depends on how you configure emergency call and the panic button. Safe Corridor is a virtual chaperone that allows me to check in at regular intervals and let my organization know that I'm safe. Those intervals can be 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or even a full hour. And as I'm going about doing my job, I'm a lone worker in the field, I'm doing my job, I check in at regular intervals, and I get a pin on the map so my organization knows exactly where I am, and they know that I'm safe. And if I fail to check in, the mobile app or the iWatch app will automatically initiate an SOS and send a notification to my security team so that they know something is wrong and they can follow up with me. The SOS shows up on the map for our administrators. As I mentioned, 2 minutes of audio and video gets captured, and the administrator gets to see exactly who was the person who pressed the panic button. They see a link to that video. They see the phone number of the person who pressed the panic button, and they can geolocate the person on the map and know exactly where that person is. Another key feature of Safety Connection is private incident zones. Private incident zones gives the administrators the ability to geofence an area and send a notification to everyone in that area based on their static and dynamic locations. But if Annie is not in that polygon and later enters the polygon while the notification is still active, she will also receive that notification. So that's the beauty of private incident zones. Private incident zones allow you to create a geofence and put a duration on that geofence. For example, there is a hazmat incident in this area for the next 6 hours. Notify everyone in that area and tell them to evacuate. And if anyone enters this geofence, let them know in the next 6 hours that they need to evacuate immediately. So it keeps that geofence alive for as long as you want it to be alive. Now, as we walk through a few features, let's also talk about a couple of key use cases. One is travel safety. Travel safety, a lot of organizations have more travelers now than they did ever before. And in case of a location-based emergency, I need to be able to communicate to all of my local employees, my travelers, my lone workers, my expats, and my visitors. In order for me to know where my travelers are, I need to have their travel itinerary in the platform. So from one interface, be able to communicate to my travelers. In this scenario, I have a COO going to Turkey, and the security operations manager realizes that there is a military coup happening in Turkey and sends a notification to that COO asking her if she needs any help, the security operations manager can see in the Everbridge platform that the COO has an itinerary to Turkey. So that notification goes to the COO. The COO says that they need a hotel outside of the coup area, the protest area, and the security operations manager can work with the travel team to book another hotel for this person and send them another notification to make sure they are safe. So by knowing the location and being able to filter the map and say, show me who is going to be in Turkey, you can limit the risk to those employees and do a life safety check on them. The whole point of having the travel itineraries is so that you can filter the map and say, show me who is in Paris right now because I need to communicate to them. Or do a rule, create a rule and say, send this notification to all of my employees who are going to be in New York next week. Travel itineraries give you a lot of options to filter and create rules based on expected locations. Another use case is a lone worker use case. We have an oil and gas worker going to inspect a pipeline, and that's a dangerous job. We want them to use safe corridor and check in at regular intervals so that we know they're safe, and we get a pin for them on the map every time they check in. And if this person for some reason fails to check in at the regular interval, say at the hour mark, the app will automatically initiate a panic and it will send a notification to the security team, and it will capture 2 minutes of audio and video, and it will share that with the security operations manager so that they can see what's going on around this person, around the inspector. And if the inspector is for whatever reason hurt or injured, we will be able to dispatch help to that person immediately. So that's a lone worker use case. Another lone worker use case could be nurses visiting patients in their homes, or agency workers going to people's homes, or oil and gas and utility workers executing tasks out in the field. Anyone who is doing something by themselves out in the field are considered lone workers, and if we need them to check in at regular intervals, we can help them use safe corridor. So as you can see, with the campus safety, travel safety, and lone worker safety, those are the 3 key use cases that Safety Connection addresses. And here at Everbridge, our mission is keeping people safe and businesses running faster. So we provide the software tools to achieve those use cases. With that, I would like to open it up for some questions. Feel free to type in your question in the chat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Lamphere in Everbridge, and I'm here to help Annie field your questions. So please do enter any of your questions in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So we do have a question. Annie, our first question is, are we tracking employees without their knowledge? How do we protect their privacy?
That's a great question. We hear that quite frequently. Not tracking employees without their knowledge. The sources of location data, such as travel itineraries and badge access data, are things that organizations already own. Now, from the mobile app perspective, the mobile app has the ability to send location data only if the end user allows location sharing to be enabled on the mobile app. The app can send location data on an automated basis. We call that auto check-in, or it can only send location data when the end user presses the check-in button. So it's the end user who consents to sending their location data from the mobile app to the platform. Now, if the end user says they don't want to share their location, the organization has other sources of locations, such as travel itineraries, badge access data, and other location sources to layer the app location data as well.
Thanks, Annie. Our next question is, so with SOS, where does it go? Who does it notify?
Great question. SOS is 100% configurable. So the organization gets to decide who is the recipient of the SOS notifications. Annie presses the SOS. Does it go to the security team? Does it go to the Global Security Operations Center? Yes. Those are the things that the organization gets to decide and configure in the platform. So they get to route it. And if there are, let's say you have multiple security operations center, you can say if the SOS comes from Singapore, I want this operations center to respond. If the SOS is coming from London, I want my second operations center to respond. These are all configurable features, and organizations get to route it appropriately.
Great. So our next question is, does Everbridge integrate with travel service platforms like TripAction?
Yes, Everbridge integrates with many travel booking systems and GDSs as well. We have ways of integrating with TripAction.
Okay. Our next question is, are we able to embed this functionality into existing company applications that employees already use so they don't have another one?
I assume the functionality that is referred to is the mobile app or the travel or the location data. Yes, much of the functionality is available via APIs, and it can be embedded in another tool. That's the short answer.
Great.
Discuss that further with the account manager to understand exactly which pieces of the functionality we want to embed so that we can guide appropriately.
We've got time for one more question. So this question is, does the mobile app constantly track locations, or is it only when a user wants their location to be shared or sent?
Yes, great question. The mobile app is not sending location data without the consent of the end user. The end user decides when they want their location to be shared. There's a setting in the app, and the end user can say, stop sharing my location or start sharing my location. Hope that helps.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Safety Connection demo, and thank you, Annie, for being such a great presenter. And
thank you all. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great day. Goodbye.